Right, yeah, yeah, good question. So I know that we had a fair amount of people who signed up. I'm not sure who actually made it in time, so we'll see, we'll see who's here. But I will say that we are lucky to have Eden here, and Eden is someone who is the director of the college workshop. She has 30 plus years of experience advising students through the college application process, and the the college workshop itself, far precedes Eden, and I'm sure it will take after Eden as well. So, and it is a staple in Arizona, and it's a word of mouth institution with an 80%, I think that's right, yeah, an 80% acceptance rate of clients into their list of colleges that Eden and clients work together. And Eden has been gracious enough to grace us with all of these years of experience and answer questions. And so we're here to learn a little bit about the college process in general, the college workshop, and just ask questions. And so this is a time when we are just working to get these questions answered from Eden. So Eden, I think, is going to describe some stuff to us, and then mostly it's going to be a questions and answers session. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it, and I know everyone else here does as well. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much for having me. I have been in this business for a very long time, and unlike many other college counselors, I think that my origin story is a little bit different. I think a lot of people have jumped into this field who were former high school counselors or former admissions officers, and that's not how the college workshop originated at all. It actually started back when I was applying to college myself, lo these many years ago, and couldn't get good advising from my own high school counseling department. No fault of their own. They just had way too many students with way too many other issues to deal with. And so my mother sort of stepped in to advise me. And the day that I got my acceptance letters, because back in the day, let me hit do not disturb here. Back in the day, acceptance letters were all mailed on April 12th. So you get them on April 15th, right? And then you had 2 weeks to make a decision about where you were going to college, to visit the schools, whatever it happened to be. Because ED and EA were not as big back then. I mean, they did exist, but not in the way they do now. It's not so as crazy as it is now. And so the day that I got all of my acceptance letters, because I'm just that awesome, I got into all six of my schools. Okay, six. That's all right. Because back then you applied on paper. Okay, my best friend at the time got rejected to all 13 of his schools, and so somebody had to do something about that, and that is where the genesis of the college workshop began. I could talk about all sorts of aspects of the college admissions process, about whatever, but since I'm more interested in addressing the students' needs and what they want to know about it, because I understand we have a very diverse group of people here, I would rather just answer their questions if that's possible. But I'm also happy to talk about any aspect of the process that anybody wants me to.
So Eden, I would request you to give a little bit of background on, and I know you already did that, but what are your specialties? What do you do so that the kids also understand,
Yes.
what to ask? And you have been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's crazy. So just give them a little bit of that, and then we can open up the floor for
Sure.
questions.
All right. Well, usually when I'm traveling or meeting people and they ask me, what do? I joke, I say as little as possible. All right. But really, I do a lot. And if it has anything to do with the college admissions process, I either deal with it or have an opinion about it. All right. And so that means that sometimes people come to me a little on the earlier side and get advice regarding what they should do extracurricularly or choices they should make curricularly in order to maximize their chances of getting into a top college. That being said, I always remind people that high school is a process and not just a means to an end. And if you live your whole life trying to get into college, you're going to have an unhappy high school experience. And there's no guarantee that all of that hard work is going to pay off. That's the depressing part of the equation, but it is also reality because college admissions has become so crazy competitive. When I work with students on the actual college admissions process, I can help them select their schools. And I do this with a tool I call the personal and academic self-assessment. It's a lengthy, nosy, obnoxious personal questionnaire, the answers to which I analyze and then generate a list of colleges that I think make sense for a student based on his or her needs. And this is not just academic needs, because you're all more than just students. You are people. You have social needs. You have extracurricular needs. Perhaps you have religious affiliations or political opinions or something else that might impact whether or not a college is a good match for you. Because for me, it's all about making a good match, right? So the college search tool, the personal and academic self-assessment, which I also call the PASA, is my way of doing that. And there's a long form and a short form of that. The long form is for most students. The short form is for students who already have inherent restrictions on their list, such as health issues or really obscure majors, musical theater, for example, or architecture or marine biology. They're just not quite so common as some of the others. Or they want to play a sport at a particular level, like Division I soccer, Division III lacrosse, rowing, that kind of thing. The other thing that I help students do is put together their extracurricular resumes. Resumes for a college are a little bit different than what you would present to a business that you're trying to get an internship for. A little bit more flexible. You don't have to do this like one-page thing in most cases. Presenting your activities in a meaningful and understandable format that really sells your accomplishments is an art form, and I don't expect students to know how to do that off the bat. So we work on the resume and we tweak it and we try to get it into some sort of decent shape so that it can either be uploaded to a college application if that's allowed, or used as the basis for filling out the activity section of a college application. And working on a resume is a work in progress. I mean, usually we don't finalize it until right before an application is submitted, because things continue to happen up until that point. A big part of what I do is help with application essays, right? To many people, that's the scariest part of the college application process. Oh, I have to write a personal statement and all of these supplemental essays, and I don't know what to write about, and I don't know how to write them because school teaches me a certain style of writing, and I don't think anybody wants to read a 5-paragraph essay with a thesis statement. That's just not my idea of fun. That's not going to convey anything meaningful about me. What do I do? So a lot of what I do is help with essay writing, teaching students how to write essays that convey something meaningful about them in a way that helps them stand out from a pack, because, as you know, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of qualified applicants academically. So how are you going to help yourself stand out? Well, that's one major piece of the puzzle. And I also advise in terms of who to ask for letters of recommendation, what the strategy for whether or not you should apply early decision or restricted early action or early action, and basically take students through the entire college application process from beginning to end, including filling out the forms, which sometimes aren't always that clear. And that's the bulk of what I do at the undergraduate level. I also work with graduate students, medical school, law school, etc. But that's essentially what I do in a given season most of the time.
Just so everyone knows, in the chat, I was kind of putting a summary of the services that the college workshop helps with in there. And then the Q&A is also open, so you can go and add questions there. That's my kid. I think Riley has a question, but they're a little young, so I don't think that we should entertain their question.
Well, I just want to know if if they do have questions, feel free to ask. I understand it can be nerve-wracking to do so, to ask questions in a public forum, but if I know the answer, I will tell you, and if I don't, I will make one up. No, I'm just kidding. I will admit it. So who is even in the house today?
Yeah, so I have some questions that I can pose, but I think if we let the silence be here for a little bit longer, something will pop up.
Okay.
But I will say that we have people from Georgia, New Jersey, Texas, California, Arizona, Kuwait. So we kind of have people from a little all over. So it's an interesting, awesome dynamic. And we have people from varying ages as well. So we have, I think, ninth grade up all the way up to some people who are at like community college level who are thinking of transferring as well. So we have a really diverse group of people who might have different perspectives of what they might need.
Yeah.
Okay, well, nothing's popped up yet. So I'm going to ask a question and then I'm going to challenge everybody to post their questions. So if I were a sophomore, so say a 10th grader,
Mhm.
how can I build or an 11th grader? So you guide me on what should be appropriate. How can I build a balanced college list with reach, match, and safety schools?
Well, that's part of what I do with the personal and academic self-assessment. However, obviously you don't need that tool in order to do that. But building a list means understanding really what your chances of getting in are. And that's not always easy to do. People often overestimate their chances of getting in or aren't quite sure how to evaluate what their chances of getting in are. But I do feel that it is very, very, very important for you not to just apply to a whole slew of long shots, right? I mean, I don't need to know anything about you to know that a school like Stanford or Harvard or Princeton or Yale or Duke or Notre Dame is a very, very big long shot. All of those schools are posting acceptance rates in the single digits. All right. You may be a very, very strong candidate, but I would never say, oh, that's safe for you, or even a target, right? Okay, because we've all heard the stories of very strong candidates who we thought, oh, that student's gonna walk in, and then you find out that kid's been rejected everywhere, right? So the key is to building a balanced list is to understand that a long shot is a long shot, and yet there are degrees of long shots. All right, there's your Stanford, which if you knew the airplane going to Palo Alto, California, where Stanford is located, had less than 4% chance of landing safely, because that's Stanford's acceptance rate, you would know right away that that's not just a long shot, it's a big, ugly long shot. But if you're looking at something that's got acceptance rates in the 20% or 30%, they may still be a long shot depending on your profile. And by that, I mean your grades, for example, and your test scores. But they're not going to be the kind of scary long shot that a Stanford or a Harvard would be. All right. But the first thing you need to do when you're building a list is obviously take a look at your grades and see if you're qualified. I mean, in terms of admissibility, like what are you up against? You know that at Stanford or at Harvard or at Northwestern or Yale, you're looking at kids who mostly have straight A's. No, not everybody is without a blemish on their record as if a B is the end of the world. No, it's not. However, if you're a C student, good luck, babe. I don't care how strong your test scores are. All right. The hardest column to populate, the hardest um, list of schools to come up with is generally your target schools. Schools these days tend to run to the very, very competitive side or are perceived as being much, much easier, right? And it's those schools in that mid-range that are really hard to evaluate. Now, there are all sorts of tools out there that kind of can help you with this, right? But they are like Naviance has scattergrams. Or is it all right? This is a way that plots your GPA by your test scores and then compares you to other kids at your school who applied to that institution and whether or not they got in. But one, not every school has Naviance. Number two, not everybody reports all of their data, right? And three, those are just two data points, grades and test scores. And obviously we are more than our grades and test scores. If it were all grades and test scores, we would be in a different system. All right, we might be in a system like Japan or India, or where things are all test-based, generally speaking, right? But you can certainly use tools like that to get a sense of your odds. The best way, I think, is to talk to somebody who knows something about it, right? And get some insight into, all right, that person looks at your grades, that person looks at your test scores and the strength of your curriculum, the rigor of your curriculum, and says, okay, based on this and what some other factors like your resume, I think this is a safety for you, this is a target for you, this is a long shot for you, and maybe this is a big ugly long shot for you. And that was a long-winded answer, but the point is it's not a simple process to do it right.
Yeah,
No,
that's super helpful. And then, Rashna, did you have a follow-up question or?
yeah, no, I just wanted to ask you, Eden, I know that test scores and grades are extremely important. What about extracurricular activities? What about research? What about other things that they are doing? Because what I see, and me as a high school teacher teaching for 10 years, I see that the students, and most of these are brilliant kids, right? They'll at least have a 3.0 GPA, which is competitive for these colleges. So they'll all go for those 4.0 unweighted. They'll go for rate SAT, ACT scores. They'll do an extracurricular activity, which is either singing or dancing or music or swimming or sports. And they all become members of a club to show leadership. So and that's what my question is, right? If every single one of you is doing every single one of that, how do you put yourself out there and how do you make yourself unique?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, right? I mean, some people have life experiences that are so interesting that they don't have to worry quite so much about that. But the reality is that there are over 100,000 highly qualified applicants going for these same schools. And based on grades and SATs, uh, the schools have just way too many people to choose from, which is why we have essays and extracurriculars. And the extracurricular piece of the puzzle has become so critical to whether or not you're going to get in. That's because there are sort of two pieces to the equation, right? We have what I call the numbers, what we've been talking about, which are grades and test scores, right? What do those tell admissions? They tell admissions that you can do the work on that campus, that there is a very good chance that if they accept you, you will graduate from that institution, that you can cut it, all right? Why do they look at everything else? They look at everything else because they are looking to see what you can contribute to campus. What do you bring? All right. And the more competitive the college, the more they expect to see something on your resume that is atypical. All right. It used to be that you could found a club and suddenly you were above and beyond. That is so 15 years ago. Okay. Right. Now people are founding major nonprofit organizations that raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're up against those people. You're up against Olympic caliber athletes. Now, this is not for every college. I want you to understand that there are plenty of colleges that have much more reasonable expectations. All right. But if you're talking about the most competitive colleges in the nation, then your resume is so important. And the one mistake I think people make all the time is they think they need to be well-rounded in that regard. Absolutely not true. You've seen it, I've seen it. All right. Academically, I expect you to perform across the board. That's what I mean by well-rounded. You're good in math, you're good in English, maybe you're really good in English, but I still expect you to be good in math. Okay. But from an extracurricular standpoint, I don't want to see, oh, I did 5 hours of community service here and I joined these clubs, and oh yeah, I was president, but my presidency of this club did nothing. Okay. Like, these big name schools, they want to see real initiative. They want to see real leadership. They want to see real intellectual curiosity or depth of commitment to something you really love. All right. I hate the word passion. It's completely overused. But if you have a passion for something, you have a talent, they want to see you develop that. And yes, that will make you not well-rounded. It will make you angular. And believe it or not, that's what the colleges are looking for. They are looking for angular students, extracurricular people who really put time and effort into a few things. I don't need to see 10 to 20 things on your resume. I need to see a few things that you've done really well, put the time and effort into. Now, so if that's research and you get yourself published, or you talk on the TED stage, or you do a science fair, or you do found a club and that club actually does something meaningful, all right, you're ahead of the game. All right. But if you're just like, I was student body president, in most cases, student body president is a popularity contest, and student body presidents don't have real power. Okay. But if you were student body president and you affected a major change on your campus, now I'm interested in that. All right. And not everything has to be through some sort of formal organization. All right. Way back in the day when I was applying to colleges, and I wasn't even thinking about this stuff. Yeah, I was vice president of Interact, and oh, I was elected president of French National Honor Society the year my club voted to do nothing. So, but I got to put president on my resume and then couldn't say a thing that I had done. Right? Okay. But what did I do that was a little different or weird? And this is not to toot my own horn. This is to make a point, just so you know. I happened to really like my French teacher, and she had this thing where every year she would send stuff down to an orphanage in Mexico. And one of the things that I noticed was that in my neighborhood, which used to be an orchard, there was all of this unpicked fruit hanging off the trees. So I just gathered a bunch of friends, and every year we'd gather all the citrus and we'd send it down to this thing in this orphanage in Mexico, and it became a thing. Oranges for orphans. Okay? Just that's initiative. That's seeing a need in your community and filling it. That's the kind of thing, that we're looking for. I love the reaction. That's cool. All right. So for your resume, listen to Rachna. She knows what she's talking about. Okay. Depth of commitment, real fire, real passion. If you have a talent, develop it. If you don't have a talent, but you love it, work hard at it anyway. All right. And show us what you got that makes you unique. Another word that I cannot stand, because guess what? There's no experience that a 17-year-old could have had, or a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old could have had, that nobody else has ever had. I mean, it's just, you're a teenager. Hello, you have a limited set of life experiences, but there are things you can do to maximize your potential, and also in the process, make your high school years more pleasant, because who doesn't want to do what they really want to do? All right, doing the things you think you have to do and hating every minute of it, not so much.
No, and Eden, I'm so grateful for you saying this out loud, because a lot of people think, and they have a FOMO. The FOMO is fear of missing out.
Yes.
What they don't realize is that while cherry picking everything that's potentially out there, and parents spending hundreds and thousands of dollars to make their students' resume shine, what they're basically doing is they're shading it gray.
Yes.
Yes. And they don't need that many things to show what they are good at, and we need the depth.
Yes.
And that's why I love the passion component, because I mean, the kids don't know that, but the fact that they know something is their passion and then working towards it in depth, I think brings in that knowledge component and that research component. And that's where I think kids do really well in that. So thank you for that. Sarah, you have a question.
Yeah, so we have a student question. So if there is a program that I like, is there a possibility to not just tour the college, but visit the program and see what they are looking for, and see if I really like the program?
So you're talking about an individual program at a given school.
Yeah, I didn't get an example from the student, but
in general, when you tour a college, you get a general college tour. But there are often times when you can make arrangements to visit a campus and see a particular department or program. That being said, nothing is going to substitute for your doing the research into the program yourself. Like stepping on campus and having somebody sell you a bill of goods is not the same as you're sitting down and saying, maybe I should look at the curriculum. Maybe I should look at the pedagogical underpinnings of it. And by that, I mean, what is the philosophy of how they teach things? All right. Is this a team-based learning environment? Is this an individual-based learning environment? Is there an emphasis on research? Is there an emphasis on real-world solutions? Right? Those are the kinds of things that are going to help you get a sense of whether or not it's even worth stepping onto that campus. And often I would also say that it can be helpful to contact actual faculty. However, don't always expect a response. Faculty are really, really busy, and they also don't particularly care for it when it looks like you're fishing to make a connection so that it looks like you're going to be able to name drop and it increase your chances of getting in. Okay, that's not what this is about. All right, you need it to really be about making a good match in the first place. Is this program right for me? I would also emphasize that as good as a program may be, if it is embedded in a university that does not fit you, you are not going to be very happy or thrive there. Okay, I'm having this conversation right now with a parent who is insisting that her child apply to the University of California at Berkeley because they have the #2 chemical engineering program in the country or something like that. Okay, and that's all well and good, but on so many other metrics, Berkeley is not a good match for this kid. Just not a good match for this kid. She's not going to be doing chemical engineering all the time. She's going to be doing chemical engineering a lot of the time. All right. But there's a whole social atmosphere. There are other things you need to do. All right. So it's a great question. All right. But program is embedded in the school, and the school has a culture. And also sometimes the particular program has a culture, right? Like for a long time, there was a particular school, I will not say its name, that had a terrible reputation for pre-med because everybody was so hyper competitive that they would undermine each other. But that was not general for the rest of the school. All right. But that was a long-winded answer. But my point is, yes, often you can make contacts with people in specific programs, but it can be hard sometimes. It is very college dependent, and sometimes the smaller liberal arts colleges are more open to this kind of thing than these big universities, which are, professors are swamped with hundreds of students a week who have office hours, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and those are really great points and things to think about. I know personally when I went and I was visiting colleges, I I did my own personal tour of the library, because if I didn't think that that was someplace I was going to study and spend time, and it was going to be engaging for me to focus there,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to get my work done. And so I said no to some schools strictly just from the libraries.
Yeah,
So,
and what's
you know,
wonderful now,
sometimes you
though,
just, but you wouldn't know, right? Yeah. So there's sometimes it's just really interesting, all the different aspects and things you have to think about to find the right fit. So thank you
yeah.
for that.
But
And then,
part of finding the right fit is thinking about your needs and wants, right? We're so busy thinking about what the program wants, what the college wants, that we forget that we have wants and needs. And if the college doesn't meet those wants and needs and we get there, we're likely to be miserable. All right. And maybe you're willing to be miserable at a big name school to get the big name degree, but I'm not quite sure that's a healthy way to go about things. And it's certainly not
yeah,
my personal philosophy, right? So,
yeah.
right, like for you, library space. Which of these students
This-
out there would have stopped to think about it, though? You did, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
So you took that into consideration. And of course, now we have all sorts of online tools, which we can do virtual tours of things. So at least if we don't have the money or the time to visit immediately, we can at least take a virtual tour and get a sense of things, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of things actually come into play as well as to scholarships, right? So for
Yeah.
my daughter personally, she is in her third year at U of A. So she got into John Hopkins, she got into Georgia Tech, she got into UT Austin, but she preferred to stay at University of Arizona because she had a full ride through Flynn. So, and again, it's closer to home, it's, but a lot of factors come in.
Yes.
So
Yes.
absolutely.
And I don't know
So,
anybody who in their right mind would turn down the Flynn. I'm sorry. It's such a great program.
yeah. No, one of my students did though. He
Yeah,
got
it
into
happens.
Stanford. He's like, I don't even care about that. So it's personal choices, I
Oh, it is.
guess.
It
Yeah,
is. But the
yeah,
Flynn is pretty amazing
yeah,
program.
yeah, yeah. And just to answer a lot of questions, we do have a session next September 20th coming up where we have students from universities, our past DRIPBL students, who's going to come and talk to the kids as well. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I love that you're doing this kind of thing. I mean, the outreach, just being willing to inform your community, I think is great.
Sarah, you're muted.
And sorry, yeah, and those students are like they're doing kind of what the they're giving that inside look of what
Mhm.
Eden's talking about, of what the program's like, right? What the pedagogy, like how the teachers teach, what the program looks like, right? And so they also talk about what are the dynamics between the students, right?
Mhm.
What was it like adjusting, being at school and away from home, right? What are the clubs like there? Like, so it's a different insight than you'll definitely get from a tour or virtual or in
Yes.
person, or even if you meet with the program and talk to the administrative people or the
Mhm.
faculty. So it's a really different way to approach looking at schools. And so yeah, I think one, plugging it, making sure people use the resource, but it's also a good way to think about college applications. We did get another question. So someone asked, when should I start preparing for applications and standardized testings?
Okay, that's a really good question. So I would say that the way I do the process tends to move it a little bit later than some other people do, because I think that the closer you are to the person on camp, you're going to be on campus, the better your materials are going to be, and the more emotional growth you're going to have experienced. You also might have more things to draw on for your applications, right? But beyond like preparing in the sense of doing really well in school and doing your extracurriculars, then I start the nitty gritty of the college application process second semester, junior year. And then when it comes to thinking about essay topics, I generally have students start to think about that at the end of junior year with the idea that they have the summer to really kind of try to nail down a personal statement topic. This varies from student to student. Sometimes it's very clear what that student needs to write about, and sometimes finding a personal statement topic. By the way, personal statement refers to the major essay that goes on most college applications, not all. Coming up
Is
with a topic for that's really important. So I say you really start to think about where you're going to apply beginning the second semester of your junior year, with the idea that you're going to come up have a final list by August or September, and some sense of where you're going to apply before then so that you know what you need to do. So like a typical applicant with me would be working on the resume through the spring. I would give, if they go through college search with me, they'd have a preliminary list of colleges from me based on their personal academic self-assessment in mid-June. I would say this is how you research these schools in terms of your own needs. Take the summer to do that and also go do something awesome with your summer. And then usually, because school around here starts beginning of August, which is ridiculous, we will then really start the essay writing process at that point. If you're the type of person who is going to do this on your own and you're like looking for a timeline for yourself, you need to be very aware of your deadlines. Are you applying early? If you're applying early, what is the deadline for that? Because many cases it's November 1st, but guess what? There are a handful of schools that actually have October 15th early action deadlines. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you need to be aware of your deadlines, and you need to kind of look at the amount of work you're going to have to do to meet those deadlines. One of the challenges in this day and age is that, let's say you're applying through the common application for the most part, like to common application schools. You know you're going to have a personal statement to write, and that's the first thing you should really tackle. However, sometimes the supplemental essays don't come out until August. So like maybe you can gamble and say they're going to be the same as they were last year, and often they are. But every once in a while, the schools change things up, and they did this year. I'll tell you that. They changed up. So if you like try to pre-write too much, guess what? You might write something that's no good anymore, doesn't work for anything, right? And just anticipate that the first semester of your senior year is going to be very much having to grind through the work of the college applications, with the idea that obviously you're going to meet your early deadlines. And then if you're smart, you will not assume that you're going to get into like your top choice school or all of your early schools. So if you have any RD schools, you should regular decision schools, you should continue working on those until such time as you know for sure what you're doing, right? So if you apply ED, say you apply early decision Duke, that application this year will be due November 1st. So you get your Duke application done and you think, aha, I'm done. I don't have to worry about this. No, Duke is a very big long shot. You should be continuing to work on your other applications. And then if in December you get into Duke, hallelujah, you're done. But guess what? If you get deferred at Duke, which is very likely these days with its ridiculously low acceptance rate, you don't want to be starting to work on your stuff then when you're depressed because you didn't get in and you're frantic, right? So there is you really need to kind of plan your timeline accordingly and be smart about it. And that can be complicated too. But in terms of testing, so the standardized testing landscape is still a bit in flux, right? A lot of schools are still test optional. Some are not, more are not going to be. And I think everybody would be wise to have a good set of test scores available to them just in case, right? Just in case. You're planning for that. I advise you take your first SAT or ACT in the spring of your junior year, unless you're a testing prodigy, right? And you can do it earlier, but spring of your junior year, so that you'll still have time to take one or two more max in late summer or early fall. One thing I don't think people should be doing is taking tests 6, 7 times. Okay, you'll get test burnout. It's not a good use of your time. You have to improve a certain amount in order for it even to be worth it. Okay, because the test score is actually a range, not a hard number. All right. And then people are going to ask me ACT versus SAT. I know this one's coming, even if nobody's asked it out loud, right? SAT versus ACT. The schools don't care anymore. It used to be that if you were on the coasts, you're expected to submit SATs, and if you're Midwest, you're ACTs. That's completely changed. Some people are like, well, I should take both of them. And I'm not so sure that's the case. What I advise is you take a practice test of each, and then you just see if you do significantly better on one or the other. If you do significantly better on one or the other, then you go with that one and you really focus on working on that one, right? Most of the time, people score pretty much the same on both tests, right? There are these things called concordance tables. Concordance tables basically convert the Celsius of ACT to the Fahrenheit of SAT. And most people score pretty much the same. Every once in a while, somebody does significantly better on one of those tests than the other, right? But if you're like most people and you're pretty much going to score close to the same, pick one and focus on that. Get some tutoring or do some test prep. Really because the higher the score, obviously, the better it's going to be for you. But I wouldn't spend time necessarily prepping for 2 different tests. I wouldn't take it a million times. It's just not healthy.
Is the ACT typically more accessible for international students, or is the
I don't
SAT?
even know. Okay, because things have just been changing, right? Now there's a digital version of the SAT, and now like some of the colleges are not looking at the science portion of the ACT, and
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it sounds like, you want to make that decision pretty carefully and
Yes.
calculated depending on the discipline that you're thinking about going and majoring into. Because they might look at that more carefully. Like the program might look at that carefully.
Yeah,
Uh,
for the most part, the programs are like SAT, ACT, just, if you're going to be an engineer, you better score really high on math, right?
right.
Okay, that kind of thing. And there used to be SAT subject tests. I don't know if you remember those, the SAT subject tests. And some schools would require, or programs would require those in addition. Like Carnegie Mellon used to require like those things. And of course, those are no longer even in existence,
Yeah.
right? So they're kind of reliant on this one test, and of course your history in class. And if you take AP or IB tests, that can be helpful to them too. Although
Yeah.
AP and IB tests are optional to report, except at Barrett Honors College, which I think does require you to report all of your AP scores. At least they did last couple of years. Yeah. Again, it's school by school, right? Like you look at a school like Georgetown and they expect you to report every set of tests you ever took. So if you're going to take the ACT or SAT 7 times and you're applying to Georgetown, guess what? You have to report all of those scores to Georgetown. Every single set. There is no score choice. There's no hiding it. Everything goes to Georgetown. That's not true of most schools, but Georgetown loves to do its own thing. It still isn't on the Common App even, and it's been that way for years.
So there's another question about the Common App. So
Yeah.
for the Common App in the activities section, it has should students only include completed activities, or can they include some activities that are only partially finished because they're currently in the process of, so this student is specifically only or still in the process of grading an app, but they don't think that it'll be finished by the early application deadline, but they've already learned of, valuable lessons like how to create and train an AI model from scratch and learning Swift to code the app. So, what advice might you have for things like this where there's value, but not completion?
I absolutely would include things in process. Okay. There is no shame in that at all, as long as you will be finishing it. I don't want you claiming that you're going to do something that you're not going to do, because at some point you may be asked to show the proof in the pudding. And plus, it's just not ethical to do that. I mean, let's be straight up. But
Yeah.
the activities section is not just for completed activities. And often we are still doing activities that we started a long time ago. I mean, you're still playing violin. You haven't completed playing violin. Right? Or you're still playing soccer, you're still in the middle of a research paper, you're still doing, whatever it is, or your passion project, right? You're still doing it, creating an app, whatever it is. You betcha you put it on there. All right. Now, for the activity section, a little bit of free advice here, okay? Do not use that space, the whole 150 characters you get to describe your activity, okay? Characters, 150 characters to talk about the lessons you've learned, okay? Stick to the hard facts. This is resume language, and resume language is action verbs and specifics. Okay? Okay, none of this airy-fairy, frou-frou philosophical stuff. Okay? It drives me insane on real resumes. When I say real resumes, like business resumes, I learned important communication skills. That may be true. Guess what? Doesn't belong here. All right? What does belong there? Coded 1,400 lines using Python. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Donated 1,000 pounds of food to a local food shelter. That's what I want to see on the activity section. And if you're doing the activity section, you really should be doing it based on a fully developed resume so that you know what kind of information you should be highlighting and including. You also need to look very carefully at whether or not that school secretly allows the upload of a full resume, because some colleges do, and it's hidden sometimes in weird places because it's not in the basic Common App, it's in the school-specific questions of the Common App. So for example, you might not be aware that the University of Pennsylvania allows you to upload a full resume because you didn't look for it, or you skipped a section because it was already checkmarked green and you thought you completed it. But if it's optional, it will be checkmarked green. You have to be very careful with the Common App. Plus, they reformatted it this year a little bit, and I hate it. I don't like it. It's more difficult to navigate, but it is what it is. All right. They also shortened that additional information section where you could have put more of your accomplishments in from 650 words to 300 words. If you have accomplishments that don't fit in your activity section or in your awards and honors section, those lovely 5 slots, guess what that additional information section should be used for? Most people don't realize that, they don't do it, and they lose a really good opportunity to hash out that lovely 10 activity chart, which is so limiting. So limiting. Also, the order of your activities should reflect their importance to you and not what you think is going to impress somebody else. Okay? It's hard to do well, but do it well you must, as Yoda might say.
Thank you, Eden. And a quick question to for all the people who are watching here. How many APs? How many APs?
How
People,
many APs?
yeah, because kids kill themselves with 15, 16, 17 APs. What I have known by working with people in India, they're only allowed 5 or 6 APs maximum, and they are still very competitive in the
Yes.
US market. So from your perspective, how many APs?
I don't think there's a flat number. All right, because guess what? How many APs you can even take are dependent on where you go to school, right? Okay, and you cannot change that. Now, you could self-study and take the APs, but like look at Phoenix Country Day School. They dumped their entire AP curriculum, I think in 2018-ish. All right, those kids are still getting into big name colleges, okay? If you go to a basis, however, where the curriculum is very heavy AP, you're going to be expected to do AP. The rule of thumb is that you want to take the hardest curriculum you can handle without having a meltdown, okay? Without having a meltdown. If taking 5 APs in a given year is going to cause all of your grades to drop and you can't do anything extracurricularly, then don't do it, okay? But if you're a superstar and you're just, this is what's floating your boat and you're driven this way and you want to take all of those APs and you can handle it and still do something meaningful extracurricularly, hello, all right, then okay, go for it. But I wouldn't put a number on it. I'm with you. If you, I mean, when those students from India apply, admissions is aware that they can only take so many AP classes, right? I mean, every school has to send to the colleges a profile of their academic offerings. And so if you don't have as many AP credits as somebody from basis, like say you're a Brophy, you're somebody from basis, okay, the colleges aren't gonna be like, well, you didn't take more AP classes. Well, they weren't available, okay? They weren't available. And they're not going to penalize you for that. And again, I really want to emphasize what you did earlier, which is extracurriculars are such an important piece of the puzzle that if you are sacrificing doing meaningful things outside of the classroom to take APs, you are probably going to end up hamstringing your chances. Yeah. One of the benefits, of course, to taking APs is that you might get college credit for those APs, which is lovely and nice, all right, but you're not going to college right now. You are in school, okay, have a life, do some interesting things, keep your mental health in some decent place because I don't want you to be a puddle when you do go to college. And the colleges don't want you to be a puddle when you go to college. They want you to contribute once you get to campus.
Yeah. So as a college professor as well, right? I've seen, mental health issues increasing at the university level. One, because of burnout from high school students, and also the, students having more of a structure from, say, their teachers or just scheduling, say from family helping out or just the way the structure of the school is. And then they go to school and then it's all on them. And there's this added time management and they have to manage everything on their own. And then they get to school and they also have to sometimes figure out what they like themselves.
Yep.
And being away from home for the first time. And a lot of people really struggle. So yeah, like I put in the comments, conservation of your greatness when it comes to your courses. So you want to like make sure that you're enjoying life and also making sure that you can keep accomplishing at that high level. Because if you can't accomplish anything, that's not going to help when you get to the school of your dreams.
Yeah. And then I would like to point out that if you have dreams of going on to graduate school, if you're burned out when you get to undergrad, you're not going to perform at undergrad to get into your Harvard Law School or your medical school or whatever else. I mean, you make a very good point. We have to think long term here. We're so busy, and it's understandable. I blame the colleges for a lot of this, right? That we are so focused on getting into college. But I want everybody here to take a minute just to think about maybe thinking about their entire life plan. And that doesn't mean knowing what you're going to do. It means like using your energy in such a way that you're living, in the present, not just for the future. But also keeping an eye on the fact that how you do now mentally is going to impact what is available to you in the future and what you're capable of doing in the future and whether you can handle it in the future.
No, and so rightly said, Eden, because I have seen a lot of parents and the students struggling over the summer. Miss Nat, I have nothing to do. Can I join this program? I'm like, you need to have your brain. It's like that nothing doing. That is important. So have them sit in front of the computer. Just play, not computer all the time.
Yes,
but then that not doing something is as relevant as doing something meaningful, because that keeps that balance. And with stress, and I've had every single time, parents are like, Miss Nat, can my kid join this program and that program? And I'm like, I have no opinion about those programs, because even though I know I'm not going to say anything, but the students need to relax sometimes. And getting bored, they need to be bored.
They need to be bored. I mean, and there have been books written about this, right? I mean, if you're going all the time, when do you have time to stop and just think about things? All right. I don't know about you, but some of my best ideas come when I'm about to, I call it creatively cogitate, which means take a nap. Okay. Take a nap. All right. Get away from the phone. Be forced to sit in a doctor's office where there are no magazines and there's no Wi-Fi. Okay. And I'll have a mobile hotspot and just sit there and, contemplate. Okay. You're absolutely right. There is a value in boredom. That's a value in downtime. And yet these poor kids today are so overscheduled. Like they feel like they need to fill every minute. Okay. It's not healthy. Yeah.
There's a question that we have from a student. So how do you recommend we narrow down our extracurricular activities to become a more angular applicant?
Okay, that's a great question. Pick the things you love and then dive into them. Dive into them. Now, if you have way too many things that you love, we would need to talk. All right. Because I have one student this year who she is angular, but she's also super oversubscribed. And I mean, she's amazing. She's so amazing. But she's like, well, what should I cut? And I'm like, well, you could cut this. Oh, but I really love to do that. I need that for my mental health. Oh, that's when you have a tough time. But like, okay, I'm going to bash on something. Maybe this isn't a good idea. But for example, if you're looking at your resume and one of the activities on there is National Charity League, okay? Not a big fan, okay? I'm not a big fan because so much of the time is not spent actually doing charity work. I'm like, okay, dump that for some meaningful community service if you like community service, right? Like where you actually work with one organization intensely as opposed to do an hour here and an hour there. And I'm not trying to diss that completely, but from a resume standpoint, that's not necessarily the best use of your time and energy. So I want the student to think of my activities, what do I really love to do? And also, which of my activities can I take to the next level? Okay, which can I take to the next level? All right, now, let's say you're a soccer player and you love soccer, but you're not going to be a recruited athlete. Do I say give that up? No, because soccer is fun for you. But if you think I'm playing a sport because I should have a sport on my resume, no, you don't need a sport on your resume. Okay, so pick a few things that you love. Think about how you can take them to the next level, or if you don't love something, what new thing can you do or create and take that to the next level?
Yeah, and just adding to that, Eden, I just posted on the group chat about NIAAA student, so Ansh Iyer. So he plays, and then he actually involved the community in teaching the game and also did some fundraising based off of that. And that's why he got that scholarship on NIAAA.
Yes,
so
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, okay, a couple of years ago, I had a baseball player, was hoping to be a recruited baseball player. All right. And I said, you cannot count on being a recruited baseball player. You are one injury away from not being recruited. And with the NCAA transfer portal and this, that, and the other thing. So his mother and I had talked about it. And I said, you love baseball? Go volunteer with Miracle League of Arizona. Okay. And then he got very involved in Miracle League of Arizona, which is a baseball related thing, but it's community service. And all right, so you can take the things you love and extend them.
We have a lot of students that, well, and I'm not particularly sure of everybody here because we have a wide range of students, but typically within our DRIPBL network and students who are in our courses, they are doing research. And so a lot of them, take these research projects and will kind of dig deep into those ideas. So they'll do some volunteering with them, or they'll do do a podcast about it, or they'll do some other maybe they'll invent something or create a nonprofit around it. So when for the students who are here that are within our network, what I'm hearing is this, like, create this nebulous around your research passion, if that's your passion. So if working on these research projects is something that's important to you, rather than just competing in it at a science fair, right? You could keep competing and go to other competitions, sure, but you can also engage more of the community, become a spokesperson for the problem, the real world problem that you're helping to solve with your research, and and then talk more about your research, publish it, right, and kind of like take that core part of the research and the thing that's really passionate to you, and then kind of just like build out from it.
And that's exactly what I like to see. Okay. Obviously, you don't need to do 10 different things with it necessarily, because then again, you're trying to do whatever, right? Like pick like some things you can do around it that you can really develop. And then like if it's, say it's a community service initiative, right? That's around an issue you really care about. Great. Get it set up and then make sure that it's still going to exist once you've gone on to college, right? Like that's one thing you can do. It's all well and good if it exists briefly. Okay. But if you can make it a lasting thing, great. But that's exactly the type of thing I like to see students do. Take something they really care about and find different ways to, this is very current word, trendy word right now, manifest it. Let's manifest it in different ways, right? So that you're not just the bookworm student, you're the person who is applying the research, who's got fire underneath it all and shows that fire by doing other things with it, whether it's outreach or whatever it happens to be. Those are great ideas.
Okay. All right. Well, we are getting close to the time. So if there's any parting words or of key advice that you have for our students, Eden?
My key advice is to be mindful that you're not just trying to get somewhere. Life is a process. It's not just a means to an end. But if you do the process well, you do the process in a way that is true to what you love, you will get where you want to go. All right. And you've got some very good people to help you do that right now. Yeah, the DRIPBL people are great. Use your resources. And if I learned one thing from my mother over all these years, the definition of an adult is somebody who knows when it's time to ask for help. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Do not be afraid to look stupid. All right. So many people are told, and I'm sure in this group it's happened with them, that they're so smart. And you're all very smart. I'm sure you're very smart. Okay. But when we're told we're smart too often, we tend to avoid situations where we don't look smart. Don't be afraid not to look smart. Sometimes it pays not to be the smartest person in the room. Okay. So draw on your experts, draw on the people who are here to mentor you. That's the best I can do for you.
Now, Eden, that is so true. And just let me end with this, that my life is 90% failures. 90%. And those failings have actually given me resource to develop what I had with the 10% success I had with my life. And you cannot be afraid of failing and looking stupid. Yep. All the time, even now.
It's a true story, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So thank you so much, Eden, for this. Anybody who wants to connect with Eden, let me know. And Sarah has just put the email address there as well to connect with Eden. So let's have this conversation going. And hopefully this has been informational for all of you. So again, thank you, Eden.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys are great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.